Well, good evening and welcome back again to Late Nights with Warm Whiskey. Tonight we are going to be diving back into our journey covering the Colonel E.H.Taylor expressions from Buffalo Trace. In part 1 we covered the Colonel E.H.Taylor small batch bottled in bond. Part 2 we covered the Colonel E.H.Taylor straight rye bottled in bond, and this evening we are going to dive into the Colonel E.H.Taylor barrel proof, uncut, unfiltered, as the way a lot of us believe it should be. I've griped in my videos with some of Buffalo Trace's products. They make fantastic, wonderful whiskeys, but there does seem to be a little bit of a short, abrupt finish, given the fact that they are chill filtering a lot of their offerings. From my understanding, unless you're getting certain select store picks or you're getting their barrel proof offerings, such as the barrel proof Colonel E.H.Taylor, Stag Jr., some of the Thomas R. Handy, George T. Stag, their big barrel proof whiskeys are uncut, unchill filtered, and their other offerings, though, are all, if my understanding is correct, chill filtered, which leads to, again, an abrupt finish that leaves a little bit too early than I believe it should. They are wonderful, fantastic whiskeys, great noses, great arrival on the palate, but chill filtration strips out some of those wonderful non-soluble, non-water soluble compounds that give a whiskey its mouthfeel, its finish, legs, lacing. So any whiskey that's 46% alcohol by volume or more, in my opinion, should not be chill filtered. And we can go back and look at why this occurred. It happened at a time when whiskey was in a downturn, and people were wanting cocktails that were aesthetically pleasing to the eye. And anytime you get a whiskey that was proofed down to 85, anything below 92 proof, it would tend to get cloudy or a little bit funky looking if you put it on the rocks or mixed it with other things, especially things that are chilled, cold, or contain ice. So the chill filtration process, they take the whiskey down to the freezing point, run it through a series of filter plates, and all those non-water soluble compounds coagulate on those filter plates, and they get stripped out of the whiskey. So it is nice to have these offerings at barrel proof, uncut and unfiltered, and they give us a good glimpse of what could be. There are other, bourbon is not alone. Scotch has fallen victim to this. Irish whiskeys have fallen victim to this. I believe it was just announced that Glendronach will not chill filter any of their whiskeys going forward into 2021. Big thumbs up for you doing that, and eagerly looking forward to seeing what that reveals in the nose and both palate of those whiskeys. But tonight we're covering the Colonel E.H.Taylor, and as we discussed before in my previous video, Colonel E.H.Taylor was a pioneer. He led the charge that saw the passing of the Bottled in Bond Act of 1897. He, along with Jim Crow of the Old Crow Distillery, both made their mark and had a big impact on the industry in terms of upholding and raising quality standards and, a steadfast approach to modernizing the production of bourbon. And we all owe a great deal of debt and gratitude for the efforts of those two men, because today we can enjoy some very fine quality products thanks to the foundation laid down by those. And Buffalo Trace continues to this day with the Colonel E.H.Taylor line of whiskey, and I believe they do a good job of honoring the namesake of that whiskey. And with that said, I'm going to go ahead and dive in and give a little bit of a nose to this Colonel E.H.Taylor barrel proof. So, definitely a really big, strong, dark, molasses, chocolatey presence. A real velvety sensation on the nose, and very, very deep. It's very deep, dark tasting notes, that molasses, the chocolate, and of course the wonderful oaky background that is tying all of this together. So, to be expected, or quite often, a barrel proof expression is going to amplify and highlight a lot of the flavors and notes, both on the nose and the palate, of whatever particular whiskey it happens to be. It's always wonderful to be able to get these barrel proof expressions. You have to be a little cautious. They can creep up on you. Anytime you're getting above that 110, 120, 130 plus proof point, they do pack a little potency to go along with them. And with that, let's dive in. We'll go straight to the palate and see where it takes us. I don't know if it's this particular year or bottling that I got, but this does have a pretty strong oak tannic bite on the arrival of the palate. But as it finishes, and it finishes quite long and lovely, there are all of those classic E.H. Taylor notes that come cascading down after that big, bold, oaky, tannic arrival. It's not overbearingly oaky or tannic, in my opinion. Sometimes whiskeys can be too oaky, too tannic. This one hits pretty hard, but not too hard. And after that, it rides out with all of those classic notes that you would come to expect from the Colonel E.H. Taylor line of whiskeys. This has been fun. I enjoyed doing this 3-part series. Next up, we are going to cover another series of expressions from Buffalo Trace. We are going to dive into the old horsey bottles of the Blanton's single barrel whiskey. And then we will explore the Blanton's Gold Label, as well as the Blanton's Straight from the Barrel. Both of those being European offerings. They are now available in the United States. But both of the bottles that I happen to have of the Gold and of the Straight from the Barrel happen to be European bottlings, and lucky to get my hands on them, and it's very hard to get the releases. They just now within the past year or two began releasing in very limited quantities, some of those inside the United States. So that will be up next. If any of you are out there and you can find a Colonel E.H.Taylor barrel proof, it's a 2 thumbs up. I highly recommend it. Buy it now if you see it. Hopefully the price isn't too outrageous. I believe these run you $90, $100, somewhere around there. Maybe a little bit more. And this is one of the ones, if you see it, it's so hard to find, even if it is, a couple bucks more than what you would expect. I wouldn't cry about having to do it, but we won't get into the gritty details of that. We'll just close saying I've been a big fan. I thoroughly enjoy the Colonel E.H.Taylor line of whiskeys from Buffalo Trace. Next up, we'll be exploring the Blanton's line of expressions, and hope you guys enjoyed this. Skål!